The Atlantic. Romeo and Juliet has no balcony. Shakespeare didn't even know what a balcony was, so how did one end up in his most famous scene? By Lois Levine, October 28, 2014. It's perhaps the most famous scene in all of English literature. Juliet stands on her balcony with Romeo in the garden below, star-crossed lovers meeting by moonlight. Colloquially known as the balcony scene, it contains Romeo and Juliet's most quoted lines, which are so closely associated with the balcony that they're frequently repeated, often incorrectly and in a hammy style, by non-actors who seize upon any real-life balcony, porch, landing, or veranda to reenact the moment. There's only one problem. There is no balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet. The word balcony never appears in Shakespeare's play. In fact, Shakespeare didn't know what a balcony was. Not only was there no balcony in Romeo and Juliet, there was no balcony in all of Shakespeare's England. This strange fact, the lack of a balcony in Romeo and Juliet, can easily be verified by anyone who goes back and reads Shakespeare's play, something few have done since high school. What is more complicated is understanding how a non-existent balcony has become so indelibly associated with Romeo and Juliet that today it's difficult to imagine the play without it. But tracing the history of how the balcony scene evolved over the past 4 centuries reveals that even when it comes to Shakespeare, audiences may care less about the original text than about adaptations and revisions that appeal to the sensibilities of the current era. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the earliest known use in English of the word balcone, as it was then spelled, didn't occur until 1618, 2 years after Shakespeare died. Even the concept of a balcony was, literally, foreign to Shakespeare's British contemporaries. In 1611, more than a decade and a half after Romeo and Juliet was first performed, an Englishman named Tom Coriat published an account of the tour of the continent he undertook in 1608. Italy, which figures prominently in many of Shakespeare's plays, was a source of especial architectural fascination for Coriat. Even without the word balcone to describe what he saw, the staged scene most strongly associated with Shakespeare actually comes from another playwright entirely, Thomas Otway. Little known today, Otway serves as a reminder that a famous playwright and exceedingly popular plays can fall out of public favor, as happened to Shakespeare, and particularly to Romeo and Juliet, which for nearly a century was rarely performed. Given the persistent place the non-existent balcony holds in the collective cultural memory, it's especially worth examining the effect of this enduring and adored revision. Why do audiences prefer to remember Juliet standing on a balcony while speaking to Romeo rather than allowing her to remain as Shakespeare positioned her, at her window? Audiences should not condemn the cultural process of adaptation, appropriation, and revision that created the cult of the balcony. End quote and paraphrase from this article. The Mandela effect. This is weird. Why? Could Shakespeare have not read about balconies in 1611 when Englishman Tom Coriat published an account of the tour of the continent he undertook in 1608, believed to have been written between 1591 and 1595, Romeo and Juliet was first published in a quarto version in 1597. The text of the first quarto version was of poor quality, however, and later editions corrected the text to conform more closely with Shakespeare's original. Shakespeare died in 1616. He could have updated it himself.